Canada is changing course and focusing on the EV trade with Europe, putting American automakers at danger, including Tesla, GM, and Ford. This trade war may cause supply chains to tremble and car costs to soar. Is this a one-time change or a negotiation strategy? Hold on tight as we dissect 6 key ways that this might impact the North American auto sector going forward. The counterpunch of Canada Tesla is directly impacted. In reaction to the United States tariff threats, Canada is not holding back. Canada is thinking of imposing a 100% tariff on Tesla automobiles. This implies that your next Model Y or Model 3 could unexpectedly cost twice as much if you're a Canadian Tesla enthusiast. Many purchasers are priced out of the market. Here's the real kicker, though. Tesla sells automobiles outside of Canada. Additionally, it is importing vital battery components from the nation, such as nickel and lithium. Tesla will have to seek elsewhere if Canada retaliates by restricting access to these vital resources. And that implies more expenses, a halt in manufacturing, and maybe more expensive EVs in the U.S. The stock of Tesla is infamously sensitive to trade issues. The prospect of tariffs is more than just an economic jab. The mere suggestion of Canadian limits may drive investors into a frenzy. It is a calculated blow to Tesla's long-term expansion. The pressure on American automakers is a nightmare for the supply chain. The auto industry has been closely linked between the United States and Canada for more than a century. U.S. automakers depend on Canadian manufacturing to supply vital components. However, a trade war between Washington and Ottawa over tariffs might instantly destroy the supply chain. Consider it. The majority of cars built in North America aren't produced in just one nation. Before components even reach the final assembly, they must cross borders several times. Automakers like GM, Ford, and Stellantis will have to either absorb the cost or pass it on to customers if tariffs increase prices. They're passing it on to customers. Spoiler warning. At the dealership, be prepared for sticker shock, plant slowdowns, and possible factory job losses as automakers rush to reorganize supply lines. The great opportunity in Europe, a new Canadian EV powerhouse. American automakers may be shut out of a significant market if Canada really makes the shift to the EU, while European companies like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Volkswagen prosper. Why? Because, in contrast to the US, the EU maintains comparatively open trade policies with Canada, facilitating easier market access through the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. This implies that Canadians may soon adopt European EVs as their new favorite, while a more EV-friendly legislative environment and lower import taxes make it difficult for American brands to compete. German and Scandinavian automakers may oversupply the Canadian market with high-tech, more reasonably priced EVs that outperform those made in the U.S. For the Big Three in Detroit, that is a nightmarish scenario that may completely alter their approach to sales. If Canada is indeed dedicated to this European partnership. Prior to going forward, let's change gears now and move on to our next destination. The ripple effect on consumers could result in an increase in car prices in the U.S. If the United States and Canada's trade disputes keep getting worse, American consumers will be among the largest casualties. Not just automakers would be impacted by a 100% tariff on Canadian goods. Car buyers would be severely impacted financially. Canada is a significant provider of steel, aluminum, and other necessary battery components. Automakers will have to pass those costs on to customers if tariffs cause these resources to become twice as expensive, particularly in the EV industry, where Canadian nickel and lithium are essential for battery production. This translates into higher sticker prices, more expensive repairs, and a declining selection of reasonably priced models. However, the cascading impact doesn't end there. Canadian metals are widely used in industries other than automotive, such as consumer electronics and construction. Tariffs will raise the cost of everything from cell phones to home appliances if they increase the cost of raw materials and cause inflation. Due to a trade war that doesn't seem to be abating, the American consumer may end up bearing the brunt of the load, as prices rise everywhere. Is a breakup in the making as Canada reconsiders its automotive ties? The United States and Canada have been partners in the automotive industry for many years, working together in a networked supply chain that supports North American production. However, there is currently a lot of tension on that connection. When the United States imposed a 25% tariff on auto imports from Canada and Mexico in early 2025, alleging trade imbalances and national security concerns, tensions erupted. It wasn't taken lightly in Canada, launching a large retaliatory tariff plan worth $155 billion that targets important U.S. products in response. In order to lessen its need on American imports and exports, Canada is currently looking into alternative trade agreements with Europe, relying on accords like the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. The formerly cohesive North American automobile industry may split if this trend persists, compelling American automakers to reconsider their production plans and international alliances. U.S. automakers cannot afford to overlook the potential of long-term disruption, even though a total breakup of trade relations is unlikely. Is Canada's endgame a permanent trade shift or just a bluff? Therefore, the crucial question still stands. Was Canada's action merely a high-stakes gamble to get Washington to reduce tariffs? Or is the global car trade about to undergo a fundamental realignment? According to other commentators, this is merely a political ploy to get the U.S. to reconsider its assertive trade policy. Others contend that in light of the present state of the economy, Canada is actually turning toward Europe in an effort to achieve long-term stability, independent of U.S. influence. U.S. automakers will face significant obstacles if Canada continues on this course, including increased manufacturing costs and the loss of a significant export market. In Canada, Tesla, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis might have to reorganize their businesses, look for new suppliers, or risk completely losing market share. It is evident that both countries are currently engaged in a high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship, and the result will dictate how the North American car industry develops in the future. The North American auto trade's defining moment. The message is apparent from Canada's daring move toward European relationships. The United States tariffs won't be a powerful weapon. But are we seeing the beginnings of a full trade realignment? Or is this merely a short-term attempt to compel talks? Automakers may witness a sharp increase in prices, a disruption in supply chains, and a decline in market shares if the United States maintains its position. In the future, German, Swedish, and French EVs may predominate on Canadian roadways, making it difficult for American automakers to compete if Canada is totally committed to its European pivot. What do you think then? Is the trade war only a political ploy? Or is the auto sector in North America actually about to undergo a significant change? Let's discuss it after you leave your ideas in the comments section below. Additionally, remember to click the subscribe button and enable notifications if you want to be informed of the most important automobile developments. With the most recent information on top for vehicles, we'll keep you in the fast lane. Let's go into further detail. The electric vehicle revolution is underway, and the global automotive landscape is changing faster than many expected. From sustainability to geopolitical strategy, electric vehicles or EVs are not just transforming the way we drive, but the way nations do business. In a groundbreaking move that will reshape the global auto industry, Canada has secured a landmark deal with the European Union, potentially sidelining American manufacturers in the process. This bold step could change the trajectory of North American trade relations and influence the way electric vehicles are made, sold, and driven in the years to come. As of 2025, the electric vehicle market is no longer just a niche sector. Major global automakers are racing to adapt to the massive shift away from internal combustion engines to battery-powered vehicles. But in this new world, trade agreements, tariffs, and policy decisions play a critical role in determining who thrives and who falls behind. This deal between Canada and the European Union isn't just about cars. It's about creating a new global supply chain for electric vehicle production, one that bypasses traditional routes, undermines old trade paradigms, and introduces new partnerships. The implications for the U.S. auto industry are significant, to say the least, which was finalized earlier this year, sees Canada positioning itself as a key supplier of electric vehicle parts, specifically battery materials, and manufacturing to European automakers. But what makes this deal so revolutionary is that it sidesteps the need for American involvement in critical trade partnerships. Canada's role as a supplier of lithium, cobalt, and nickel, key materials in batteries, has always been critical. But this agreement accelerates our position as not just a resource supplier manufacturing powerhouse as well. EU wants to reduce its dependency on China, and Canada is offering an attractive alternative by offering raw materials, technology transfer, and the potential for manufacturing plants in Canada. The agreement provides Europe with a reliable partner to power its transition to EVs. This puts Europe ahead of the game in its pursuit of energy independence, while making Canada a central hub in the new EV supply chain. The U.S. auto industry, once the global leader in automotive manufacturing, now finds itself in a precarious position. With the rise of electric vehicles, American car makers have scrambled to catch up, especially in comparison to their European and Chinese competitors. But this new deal between Canada and the EU might just be the tipping point. It's not just about making electric vehicles anymore. It's about securing a foothold in the global supply chain. With this Canada-EU deal, we're seeing a new competitive dynamic that could push U.S. manufacturers out of critical markets, especially in Europe, where trade barriers and environmental standards are becoming increasingly stringent. The deal's ripple effect is felt across industries in both the U.S. and Europe. In an effort to meet carbon reduction goals, the European Union has ramped up its push to source electric vehicle parts locally, with an eye on reducing its dependency on external powers, namely China and, increasingly, the United States. This comes at a time when the U.S. has been struggling with its own EV production transition. American automakers like Ford and General Motors have begun ramping up production, but they still face significant hurdles, ranging from supply chain issues to the rising cost of raw materials. For decades, American automakers have benefited from NAFTA and its successor, USMCA. But with this new Canada-EU deal, we're seeing trade agreements that may not include U.S. manufacturers in the same way. That's a huge shift. If European car makers begin to rely more heavily on Canadian-made EVs, they may bypass American suppliers entirely. With the EU's aggressive push for clean energy and Canada's newfound position in this ecosystem, the U.S. risks losing valuable trade opportunities, especially when it comes to a sector as large and influential as the automotive industry. For the United States, this deal represents not only a missed opportunity, but also a challenge to its influence in North America. Could the U.S. be losing its grip on the North American auto market as Canada deepens its ties with Europe? And how will this affect the future of U.S. trade with both its northern neighbor and the European Union? The U.S. has always been a dominant player in global trade. But if we don't step up our own investments in EV infrastructure and innovation, we could find ourselves on the outside looking in. The new dynamic between Canada and the EU is a wake-up call. It's time for the U.S. to rethink its strategy. The deal's long-term implications could be seismic. U.S. automakers may be forced to reevaluate their global supply chains and look for ways to strengthen their relationship with Canada, or risk falling behind in a rapidly evolving market. As the world turns towards electric vehicles, trade deals, geopolitical alliances, and innovative partnerships will determine the future of the auto industry. Canada's bold move with the EU is setting a new precedent, one that could change the shape of the North American automotive sector for decades to come. It's an exciting time. What we're seeing isn't just about electric vehicles, it's about global leadership in a clean, green, and innovative industry. Canada is well positioned to be at the forefront of this shift, and with the EU as a key partner, we're opening up new doors for both sides. For the US, the challenge is clear: adapt or risk being left behind. But for Canada and the European Union, the road ahead is filled with opportunity, innovation, and a chance to rewrite the rules of global trade in the age of electric vehicles. The electric vehicle revolution is here, and the future of the auto industry will be determined by those who can keep pace with the changes unfolding on the world stage. Canada's deal with the European Union to boost electric vehicle (EV) production and supply chains marks a pivotal shift in global trade and manufacturing. By positioning itself as a key supplier of critical EV materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel, Canada has solidified its role in Europe's clean energy transition, potentially sidelining US automakers. The deal not only accelerates Europe's push to reduce dependency on China, but also disrupts traditional trade routes, as European carmakers increasingly turn to Canada for raw materials and manufacturing partnerships. For the US, this poses a significant challenge as it risks losing valuable market share and influence in the burgeoning EV sector, especially as American manufacturers scramble to catch up with the rapidly evolving global supply chain. This agreement shifts the balance of power in the North American and European auto industries, urging both regions to rethink their strategies for the electric future. The historical relationship between Canada, the European Union, EU, and the United States has been shaped by centuries of trade, diplomacy, and shared political values. But it has also been marked by distinct challenges and rivalries. The US and Canada have long enjoyed a close economic and political relationship, underpinned by shared borders, extensive trade, and historical ties going back to British colonial times. Over the decades, they have developed some of the world's most robust trade agreements, notably through the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which was later replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. While the U.S. has often been Canada's largest trading partner, tensions occasionally surface over issues like softwood lumber, agricultural products, and energy. Historically, Canada has balanced its strong ties with the U.S. while maintaining its independence in foreign policy, often acting as a middle ground between the U.S. and the rest of the world. Canada's relationship with the EU has been one of growing cooperation, especially since the mid-20th century. Both are committed to democratic values, multilateralism, and free trade. Canada became a key partner for the EU as both regions pushed for economic integration, environmental sustainability, and the liberalization of global trade. In 2017, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CTA, was signed between Canada and the EU, further deepening trade ties and eliminating many tariffs on goods. While historically, the EU's economic relations with Canada have been secondary to those with the US, the growing importance of clean energy and sustainability has brought the two even closer, particularly in the areas of renewable energy, technology, and electric vehicles. The US and the EU share a strong diplomatic and economic partnership that has been central to global politics since World War II. The EU has historically been a key partner of the US in areas like security, trade, and economic cooperation. However, their relationship has also seen friction, especially over trade policies, defense spending, and the US's occasional unilateral actions in global affairs. The EU's strong regulatory environment, particularly in consumer protection, data privacy, and environmental standards has at times put it at odds with U.S. companies and policies. While the U.S.-Canada relationship has been generally stable and deeply intertwined through trade and shared security concerns, Canada's recent moves to deepen ties with the EU, particularly in the electric vehicle and clean energy sectors, suggest a subtle shift. Historically, the U.S. has dominated North American trade, but Canada's efforts to position itself as a central player in the EU's green energy transition, through deals involving EV production, raw materials, and clean technology, could lessen Canada's reliance on the U.S. in the coming decades. This evolving dynamic, particularly in the context of the global push for electric vehicles and sustainable energy, introduces a competitive angle in the traditionally cooperative U.S.-Canada relationship. Meanwhile, the U.S. and EU continue to be economic rivals, but are aligned in their interest to counteract China's growing dominance in the electric vehicle market. In short, while Canada, the EU, and the U.S. have long shared ties rooted in trade and diplomacy, the evolving global landscape, particularly in the EV sector, could redefine their roles, creating new alliances and reshaping historical trade relationships in the process.